Gunfire, ass grenade. Starting off this list, I have some whose butt is so hot it explodes unaliving him. Andrew Van Horn was the original Gunfire from the 90s Bloodlines era, a hero who could agitate atoms to turn any object into a functional gun, which to me honestly sounds like a cool superpower. Fast forward to the 853rd century during the DC 1 million event, and we meet a nameless successor who thought wearing Van Horn's old goggles would make him an instant icon. Someone please tell him he ain't 5. This guy had zero training and even less common sense, treating the dangerous business of superheroics like a red carpet walk for influencers. Because during a massive brawl involving the time-traveling assassin Tommy Monaghan, our wannabe hero decided it was finally his time to shine. However, as bullets flew and tried to weaponize his own gear by agitating the atoms of his medical pack, he started to panic. Then, in a display of physical coordination that would make a toddler look like an Olympic gymnast, he fumbled his stance while his powers were still surging. He accidentally applied the atomic agitation to his own rear end, effectively converting his butt cheeks into a pair of high-yield frag grenades. The resulting explosion was instantaneous, messy, and definitely not the kind of blowing up on social media he had envisioned for his career. It turns out that when you try to pull a trigger on your own anatomy, the universe tends to pull back much harder. So yeah, in the end, he really went out with a bang. Just not the end he intended. Multiple man's son, absorbed by his dad. Most parents worry about their kids growing up too fast, but Jamie Madrox watched his son skip childhood entirely by merging with his torso. The multiple man has the mutant power to create independent duplicates of himself whenever he absorbs a physical impact, which I think is already a recipe for a midlife crisis. In X Factor number 39, Jamie and his partner, Siren, welcomed a baby boy named Sean into the world. It was a rare, beautiful moment of peace for a guy whose life is usually a crowded room of his own faces. But just after the delivery, when Jamie finally got to hold his newborn for some father-son bonding time, he soon realized that his moment definitely was not going to last long. Because the mutant gene is essentially a cosmic prankster, it turns out little Sean wasn't a unique human being at all. The infant was actually a biological dupe that had been gestating in the womb as a separate entity until the moment of skin contact. As soon as Jamie's skin touched the baby, his natural reabsorption power kicked in like a vacuum cleaner. He watched in absolute horror as his own son dissolved into his chest, leaving him standing in a quiet hospital room holding nothing but a warm, empty blanket. I'm not sure how his powers actually worked, but that probably means he can't have kids ever in his life, which is pretty sad. I wonder what he would say when his mom asks him for grandkids. Friendly Fire, blowing his own head off. If you ever feel bad about your own hand-eye coordination, just remember there was once a man who managed to snipe his own forehead. Friendly Fire was the resident powerhouse of Section 8, a group of Gotham heroes who were mostly famous for being homeless, drunk, or just generally disgusting. Unlike his teammates, he actually had a legitimate top-tier superpower that involved blasting massive bolts of pure energy from his hands, which is why, at first, he was my favorite of the bunch. He could theoretically melt a main battle tank, but unfortunately it also has its downsides. He apparently suffered from a mental glitch that made him aim statistically impossible, because he never hit what he was looking at, usually vaporizing a nearby mailbox or sometimes a teammate's head. During a final stand against the many angled ones, he decided he was done being the team joke and aimed for a giant slow-moving demon. He poured every ounce of his willpower into a single concentrated shot that would have saved the day. However, the energy bolt zipped straight back and deleted his head from existence while his body remained standing like a recycled Roman statue. I find it both hilarious and depressing because he spent his entire life trying to be the hero of the story and ended up as the punchline of a physics textbook. I guess the fire wasn't friendly after all. Grasshopper jumps too high. Neil Shelton learned the hard way that when a superhero suit says maximum jump, it might actually be offering a one-way ticket to the stars. The Grasshopper title is basically a cursed inheritance within the Great Lakes Avengers, a team where members tend to die before they even finish their orientation. Neil was a Roxxon security guard who thought a high-tech exoskeleton with hydraulic legs would be his ticket to the big leagues. Spoilers, it's not. But this guy was incredibly eager and wanted to prove that jumping really high was a viable substitute for actually having powers. In GLX Moss Special, Neil decided to show off the maximum jump setting on his suit's control panel. He crouched down and launched himself into the air with enough force to shatter the pavement. However, instead of landing on a rooftop a few blocks away, he accidentally achieved escape velocity and shot through the clouds like a human rocket. Within seconds, he cleared the atmosphere and drifted into the silent cold vacuum of deep space. But here's the thing, the suit doesn't come with an oxygen tank, so he spent his final moments looking at the beautiful curve of the Earth while realizing he had no way to fall back down. Reach for the stars is usually one of my favorite sayings, but it's definitely not one to be taken literally. Pantha got slapped her head off. Superboy Prime has a lot of issues, but his most devastating move turned out to be a casual backhand that sent Titan's head into orbit. Pantha was a feral-clawed mutant who had survived some of the darkest experiments the wildebeest society could throw at her. Not only that, she was also a tough, cynical member of the Teen Titans who didn't take garbage from anyone, especially not whiny teenagers from alternate dimensions. However, during the Infinite Crisis event, the heroes tried to dogpile Superboy Prime, who I'd like to call a perpetuant brat trapped in the body of a Silver Age god. To be fair, Pantha did what she did best and leaped onto his back, planning to use her sharp claws to tear through his costume. But Prime was busy complaining about how the modern DC universe wasn't perfect enough for him. Before she even had a scratch on his shoulders, he just swiped at her behind him like he was shooing a fly, because his strength levels were calibrated to move planets. The casual impact didn't just knock her off his back, it completely detached her head from her neck, sending it flying across the battlefield while her body collapsed in the dirt. It was a brutal sudden exit that showed exactly how dangerous a temper tantrum can be when the kid throwing it can bench press a galaxy. So yeah, the lesson here is, when you see Superboy Prime, you run. Alexandra DeWitt stuffed in a fridge. If you're looking for the origin of the most controversial trope in comic history, look no further than Kyle Rayner's kitchen appliances. Alexandra DeWitt was a talented photographer and a supportive girlfriend who actually helped Kyle figure out how to use his Green Lantern ring. She was not only the brains of the operation, but also the person who kept him grounded while he was busy making giant emerald boxing gloves. However, their domestic bliss was cut short by a villain named Major Force, a government-sponsored psycho who is basically a walking nuclear reactor. While Kyle was out doing hero stuff, Major Force paid their apartment a visit to send a very specific, very twisted message. When Kyle finally walked through the front door, he found a note that led him straight to the refrigerator in the corner. He opened the door expecting a snack and instead found, you guessed it, Alex's body, which had been folded and stuffed into the cramped space like a bag of frozen peas. The villain didn't even want information. He just thought a dead girlfriend in the fridge was a great way to get a rise out of the new kid. This moment was so jarring that it sparked a whole movement to stop using female characters as disposable motivators for male heroes, which I was also a part in, by the way. That stuff's just not cool anymore. I guess it's safe to say Kyle probably never looked at a leftovers container the same way ever again. Talk about a cold way to end a relationship. Blazing Skull, eaten by Thor's goats. Mark Todd survived World War II and a race of subterranean skullmen, only to be turned into a gourmet snack for a couple of undead farm animals. As the Blazing Skull, he was a Golden Age powerhouse who could stay on fire and heal from almost anything, which usually makes it pretty hard to kill. However, during a weird multiversal mission in Marvel Zombies Destroy, he joined a team led by Howard the Duck to stop a Nazi zombie invasion. And as you can already guess, it didn't go as planned. The squad ended up facing off against a zombified version of Thor, which I am sure is already a nightmare scenario for anyone. Craziest thing is, Thor didn't even have to do the heavy lifting because he brought his mystical goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, who were also infected with the virus. While Mark was trying to be the brave veteran and hold the line, the two zombie goats decided he looked more like a salad than a superhero. They tackled him to the ground and began systematically chewing through his torso with their undead teeth. Because of his advanced healing factor, his body kept trying to knit itself back together while the goats were actively swallowing his organs. so he spent his final minutes as a regenerating buffet for a livestock that probably should have stayed in Norse mythology. Dying in battle is one thing, but the main course of a goat is just straight up disrespect. Personally, this might be up there as one of the worst ways to die, but I promise you, this next entry is even worse. Nightwing tripping over a small rock. Dick Grayson is a master of gravity-defying stunts, but he apparently met his match in a small stationary rock on the floor. In the Injustice universe, things were already falling apart as Superman began his transition from hero to global dictator. During a massive riot at Arkham Asylum, the Bat family was split down the middle over how to handle the criminals. Damian Wayne, his biological son of Batman, and a kid with a major attitude problem, got into a heated argument with Dick Grayson. You know, like he always does. In a fit of teenage rage, Damian chucked one of his heavy eskrima sticks at Dick's head while he was busy fighting another inmate. Dick is usually the most agile man on Earth, but he was caught off guard and the baton cracked him right in the temple. He stumbled back, dazed and confused, and tripped over a tiny piece of debris that any toddler would have noticed. He fell backward in a perfect tragic arc and landed with his neck directly on a jagged stone pipe. The impact snapped his spine instantly, killing the most beloved member of the hero community in a way that would even make the evening news. It was a pathetic accidental end for a man who had survived fights with literal gods. Because imagine training your whole life to dodge bullets only to get taken out by a pebble. I guess we can conclude that's a really grounding experience for a world-class acrobat. Comment down below if you're a Nightwing fan and you think they've done him dirty. El Guapo impaled by a skateboard. Robbie Rodriguez had a flying sentient skateboard that loved him a little too much, and by loved I mean it eventually murdered him. Known as El Guapo, he was a member of Ecstatics, a team of mutants who I think were more interested in being reality TV stars than saving lives. His primary power was his psychic link with his board, which he could control with his mind to pull off impossible tricks and attacks, which if you like skateboarding, you might find him cool. The problem was that the board was under an unknown curse that's influencing it to act irrationally. In Ecstatics number 18, the board started acting even more erratic than usual. As El Guapo was trying to maintain his cool guy persona during a public appearance, the board decided it was done sharing the spotlight. It suddenly veered off course, ignoring Robbie's mental commands, and accelerated straight toward his chest. The sharp edge of the board pierced him right through the torso, pinning him to a wall like a biological skate park accessory. He then bled out in front of the cameras, unalived by the very gimmick that made him a celebrity in the first place. You'd think a guy named the Handsome would have a more photogenic exit than being skewered by his own ride. But maybe the board just really wanted to be the one to stick the landing. You know what I mean? Chip gets isekai'd. You know those isekai anime that start with the main character getting hit by a bus? Well, it also happens in DC Comics, specifically to a little animal called Chip. This guy was a decorated Green Lantern who survived cosmic wars. Despite being an alien squirrel, he was a heavy hitter in the Corps, and he earned the respect of giants like Hal Jordan. After a long period of desperation and his loss of his powers, he finally made a comeback and was ready to patrol the stars again. In Green Lantern Mosaic number 2, he was standing on the road on Oa when a massive yellow transport truck came barreling down the highway at high speed. Here's the twist, because Green Lantern rings famously have a yellow impurity that prevents them from affecting anything that color, his power ring was completely useless. He couldn't create a shield or move the truck, he just had to stand there and watch a yellow grill plate expand in his vision of field. The truck flattened him instantly, leaving him as nothing more than a tragic pic of galactic roadkill on the side of the road. As a Chip fan, it kind of broke my heart, but I can't deny it's one of the dumbest ways to die, even for a small squirrel. Turns out the greatest threat to a cosmic guardian isn't Sinestro, it's just a lack of traffic safety. Leeta 87 slipping off a peel. Leeta 87 was a legendary warrior of the 31st century who conquered entire armies but couldn't navigate a piece of discarded fruit. In the Legion of Superheroes lore, the memorial asteroid Shanghala is filled with statues of titans who died in glorious, universe-shaking battles. Among the rows of fallen legends, there was a specific plaque for Leeta that lists her incredible list of achievements. She was known for single-handedly taking down villains that would make the average hero retire out of pure fear. However, contrary to most people's beliefs, her reign of excellence came to a grinding halt during a casual walk, as seen from the official records of the future in Adventure Comics number 341. She didn't fall to a disintegration beam or a planetary collapse. She slipped on a banyo fruit peel, which I usually just call a space banana. It's the most cliche slapstick way to die, but it's officially canon in the far future of the DC universe. She hit the ground so hard that she never got back up, turning a stellar career into a cautionary tale about littering. I suppose even in the 31st century, fruit is still the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. At least she made the history books, even if it was for the wrong kind of slipping up. Iron Man, trapped in his own suit. Tony Stark spent billions of dollars building the ultimate suit of armor, only to have it turn into a high-tech, airtight coffin. In the Marvel Universe vs. the Punisher timeline, a cannibalistic virus has turned every hero and villain into a hungry predator. While most of the Avengers were busy eating their fans, Tony managed to stay uninfected by sealing himself into his Iron Man suit. He figured that if nothing could get in, he would be safe from the plague and could wait it out the apocalypse in style. However, there's a flaw in his plan. It was that the suit's defense protocols were a little too effective for their own good. When the systems detected the biological threat outside, the armor went into a total lockdown mode to protect the pilot. This meant the suit's joints froze, the communications lines went dead, and the helmet seals became permanent. Tony screamed for days. He was trapped in a standing position, unable to move a finger or even pop the faceplate to grab a glass of water. It's basically the exact nightmare for every one of you who's claustrophobic. By the time the dust settled, there was no hero left inside, just a mummified corpse in a shiny red bucket. He died in total silence, surrounded by the most advanced technology on the planet, starving to death because he was too safe. Well, that's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.